This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. Welcome to our flower series. In this video, we're making a beautiful blooming peony. It's broken down into steps, so you can skip ahead, rewind, and rewatch as desired. We're going to make a couple of colors for our peony blossom today, and we're going to start with a kind of like berryish color, and we're going to use several shades of liquid gel, including lemon yellow, royal blue, violet, neon bright pink, and finally some red. And we're going to start out with that kind of purplish color, and we're using American style buttercream. You can see I've got quite a bit in my bowl, and I've divided it in half. And what I'm going to do is make a darker color and then use that to make a lighter color. So you'll notice I have some of it pushed over to the side. And I'm just going to start with some red, more of my violet, and finally some of that pink. I'm just going to mix that around over on this side, but you don't have to be too careful. We're going to make some blended shades, and this first one I want it to be kind of dark and intense, and then we'll go from there. So I like where we're headed. Just maybe we want to add a little more pink, kind of brighten it up, take it a little bit away from being so intensely purple. There you go. That's a nice, beautiful, dark color. Just going to take a tiny bit of that on my spatula. Just kind of clean it off mostly, and just kind of dip my spatula into that white on the other side and blend it around. You don't even have to do a full blend. Just make it nice and kind of loose. Some of it can still be white, some of it can have that little bit of that beautiful kind of berry purple we made in there. That's going to be gorgeous. So you can see you have a nice kind of softly blended color where there's still some streaks of white, some darker purple, and some light and kind of in between. And we've got our darker stuff over on this side. Next, we're going to make some green. So I've got just a little bit of my lemon yellow, my royal blue, and my violet out there. And I'm just going to start with my yellow, a few specks of that, a couple of my blue, and then I'm just going to go in with a little touch of violet. I like where we're headed. I think just a little more of my yellow and a tiny touch more of my purple, and we should be good. That looks lovely. We're going to use 2 bags for this flower. The first one is loaded with our mix of the light purple that's loosely blended in white, and we have a number 122 on it. The important note here is we've saved our dark purple, and we're going to use that later. We're going to load it into the same bag. So as we go on this flower, we're going to load in increasingly dark color. So we're going to take a few breaks while we're working to kind of change up what's in our bag, but we'll use the same one. We want a nice, beautiful, kind of streaky, mottled effect that's going to give us some beautiful, unusual, and irregular blends. Our second bag has our green in it, and it's using a number 4 tip. We're going to review the techniques for our blooming peony, and the first one is the mound. We're going to create this in the center. We're using our 122, and it's going to be very simple. We're going to start out straight up, squeeze a little bit, just to build up a tiny bit of frosting, and then we're going to rock it and kind of lay that curve over our mound, and then we're going to hold it while we squeeze and spin, and that's going to build up a nice little mound in the center for us to build our stamens on. For petals, we're going to make a couple of styles. We're going to make 2 styles of ruffled petals, a skinny one and a fat one. And we're doing 45 degrees, 130. So think the back of the bag is kind of pointing up towards the kind of upper right quadrant there. Fat end is going to start to the center. The skinny end is going to be pointing out, and you'll notice it's curved up. And we're kind of like laying the middle of the tip on the surface when we're piping. So think in this case, it's going to be on our flower nail. And so that way it's just kind of a subtle curve. And we're going to pull almost straight out and just do a little double wave there. So you can see it gives us a little bit of a curve up, but a mostly flat petal. It's pretty narrow. And we do one curve and then go a little higher for the second one. We're also going to do a fat version of this petal, so similar in terms of setup, but instead of pulling out long, we're going to go wide. So think about almost immediately starting to arc with your motion, and instead of 2, we're going to do 3. And we're not too worried about the back end on these, whether they're closed or not. We're just worried about getting nice distance there on the outside edge. We're also going to be using the same tip to do some supports. And for this one, we're just holding it straight up and down, giving it a little squeeze. Oh, there we go. To make a nice little line of frosting. And in some cases, we're just going to be piping over top of that. That's going to help push our petals up a little bit in the middle and give them a nice soft curve, like they're almost folding over and unfurling for us. For our stamens in the center of this one, we won't really see them too much, but they're going to help build the structure of our flower. We're using a number 4 tip, so nice and big. We're going to be piping on top of that first support mound where we're doing a spike. So think make a dot, tips a little above the surface, and as you go, squeeze as you pull up. And then we're going to go all around that, and we're going to pull towards the center, and it's give it almost a little pointed peak. So you want to think about doing one in the center and going around in concentric circles on that mound and always pulling towards the center. So not straight up, not out, always towards the middle. We're also going to do some upright petals, and when we pipe these on our nail, we're going to have it so that the fat end of the tip is touching our surface, which in this case is going to be some of our frosting, and we're on our flower nail. The back end is going to be at 430, so think my right shoulder, and the bag's at 45 degrees. And we're just going to make a nice little high arc motion. So when we're there, it's going to be like that. And because we're holding straight up and down, they're going to go straight up. The important part here is that we need the other structures that we're piping to support them so they don't flop over on us. And we're going to do them kind of like little kind of nested sets of petals. So think we'll pipe 1 and do 2 more almost right on top of it, just ever so slightly offset from each other. We've gone over our techniques. Now let's talk about how we're going to put them together to create this beautiful blooming peony, because we want the look of one that's not a tightly coiled ball and not completely open. We've done 2 of those styles before, so we want to do something that's kind of in the middle, and that's going to give us a nice range of styles for our peonies. So the first thing we're going to do is pipe our mound. We're going to have our 122 tip on there. We're going to start straight up, kind of give it a squeeze, and then pull up and readjust so that my bag is pointing towards my back shoulder and at 45 degrees. And then we're just going to hold there for a second while we squeeze and spin our nail. And that's going to create a nice little coned mound in the center. Once we've done that, we're going to move to working on the outside edge of our nail. We're going to pipe 6 of our skinny petals, think approximately equal distance apart. So you can do 1 at the top of the nail, 1 at the bottom, and then 2 in that middle space. And that should really help you with the spacing. Sometimes that's a little easier than going around kind of clockwise or counterclockwise and doing them one after another. If you do the first 2 top and bottom, it'll give you a little help on getting your spacing kind of approximately even. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be approximately equal distance apart. Once we're done with those 6 skinny petals, we're going to do a little support mound on the left side of each one. So think about halfway down the petal, we're just going to pipe a little tiny bit, that little tiny wedge right on there, kind of half on, half off. And that's going to give us the support we need for the next petal, which is going to be the fat ruffled petals. So think instead of long, skinny with 2 little bumps on the end, we're going to go wider with 3. And we're going to go on top of that little support mound we did to the left. So think we'll go to the left of our first set of petals. We're going to go just past that support mound to start and pipe on top of it. And that's going to draw us a little further in because we won't be as far out. We're not pulling as far out, and a little to the left. So it's going to start filling in that area just a little bit for us. So we'll do 1 for each of those first petals we did with that second row. Then we're going to go back to doing our skinny petals. So you're going to have these sets, these little duos of petals. We're going to go in between each of those and pipe a skinny one. And that's going to help to start filling out the body of our flower. Once we're done with that, we're going to start pulling the stamens in the center. So to do that, we're going to switch to our bag with a 4 number with the green, and we're just going to start right in the middle, do 1, and then we're going to go around it. So think just working out in concentric circles, and each time you pull towards the center. It might get a little messy for a little bit, but eventually it'll give you the look of like tightly coiled stamens, or maybe even petals that haven't burst open yet and don't quite have their color and are still green. And that's going to give that nice tightly coiled look with just a little pop of color down there in the center to kind of help our flowers stand out so there's not too much purple going on. And we're just going to work in concentric circles till we get almost all the way down that little mound that we made in the center, so we have a nice base built up there for us. And the real reason we want to do that is not because it's going to show, but because it's going to provide the support for the next set of petals we're going to do. So we're going to do 3 to 4 groups of our upright petals. So just pick a place to start, do 1, and then I like to go a little to the left to do the second one and the third. So just think about kind of stacking them almost like those little nested dolls, where each one is a little off and maybe just a little bit bigger. And then go make another set. It'll probably take you 3 to 4 sets to fully enclose your center, and you should just have a tiny bit of green peeking out on you when you're finished with that. Once we're done with that, we're going to go in and do a set of our fat ruffled petals. So think in between everything else, kind of almost at the base of each one of those little groupings of the upright ones we did, we're going to do a fat ruffled one. And that's going to help join these 2 sections together and make them look like they're part of the same flower. Because when we first do the upright ones, everything's going to kind of look a little disconnected. You might still have some gaps in between. So we're just going to go in anywhere we need one. It'll probably take 4 or 5 of those and do some fat ruffled petals. And once we finish with that, we're going to do some upright petals, but just at an angle. So think when we're doing the ones in the center, those nice tight groupings, that tip is oriented, overall orientation is straight up and down. We're going to kind of rock it out a little bit and do some in between. So think about doing one that's kind of off to an angle, and that's really going to kind of help us create this illusion of beautiful opening flower without having a stark contrast between those upright petals and the ones that are going more at an angle, and it'll really fill in those gaps for us. But to be a little careful when we do that, we don't want to damage or ruin our work, so just take your time. Pull them nice and slow. You don't have to do as high of a pull or go as far out on these. In this case, you can just do a nice soft curve, and it'll give you these beautiful cup petals that look like they're just kind of hanging open from that center. And it'll really finish up our flowers for us and complete the look. We've done our reviews, so now let's start piping. I've got my 3-inch flower nail. I've added a 6-section template on top. If you want the templates, check out our video on the basics of flower nails. You can sign up for our email list and get a free little download to help you with your spacing. I've got some parchment paper affixed to the top of that with some extra buttercream. I'm going to just start by making my mound. So just straight up and down, give it a rock, nice little squeeze, and then you can see I just shifted that angle and just twist and spin. Build myself up a little bit so I have a nice mound there in the center. Now I'm going to start with my skinny petals. I'm going to do 6 of them, and we want to set ourselves up for success. So back into the bag is up at 130, I'm at 45 degrees, and that opening of the tip, the overall orientation is almost flat. So you can see the kind of middle part of that curve is really what's touching. And I'm just going to start about halfway out, do a little double wave there. If you don't have a template and you're a little afraid of your spacing, go ahead and do the one on the opposite side next. And then it should be easy to get 2 approximately evenly spaced in the middle. And you can see these aren't connecting to my base. There's actually quite a bit of distance between my mound and the bottoms of these little petals. Next, we're going to do the little support mounds on our petals. So think each petal, come off to the left just a little bit, kind of angle it so it's going across just a tiny touch, and give us a tiny squeeze. We're going to do our fat petals next, those wider ruffled ones, right on top of these. So they're going to be offset from our first round of petals, and they're just going to hang out on top of those little supports. Now it's time for those wider or fat ruffled petals. We're going to go right on top of the support mound we just did. So think about lining yourself up, go a little further out, and we're also a little further in with the back end of the tip. And this means that when we go and do that little trio, it's going to kind of overhang. So you can see it kind of has a little bump up in the middle there. And that's perfect. That's what we want. Just a little kind of gradual overhang that gives it that look like it's unfolding and curling out. You can see, so these are to the left of each of our first petals, a little closer into the center. So those first ones are just a little bit longer than everything else. Gorgeous. We took a small little break and I just emptied out my bag. I blended what was in there with a little more of my dark purple, just loosely, just to give me a slightly darker color for this next set of petals. So it doesn't have to be exact. Just think you can lay the bag kind of right there next to it and see the purple is quite a bit darker. And we're going to do skinny petals now in between. So we have these groupings, these pairs of petals, and we're going to go in the spot in between and do a skinny one. So think same kind of distance as the fat ones that you just did. And we're going to pull out and do a skinny one just in there, in that little gap. And you can see that causes them to kind of fold down in between, gives you a really great, beautiful, natural look. And we've used a slightly darker blend of color. So it's going to help us create a nice, beautiful gradient on these flowers where it looks like the outer petals are lighter and the inner, more tightly coiled ones have a bit more pigment. And just go around. Do one in each of those gaps. So 6 more of those skinny petals. I've changed bags. I'm going in with my number 4 and my green, and I'm just going to start here in the middle of that mound and pipe a nice spike, just pointing straight up there in the middle. I'm going to go out next to it, down that mound just a little bit, and keep piping spikes, and each one pull towards that middle. And it'll probably take 3 rows to kind of meet up with your petals. It might take more. It depends on how far you go down with each row. But the idea here is just to make this kind of tightly coiled look, this clump of stamens, that's going to act as a beautiful base for the next set of petals that we do. It's going to give them support, and this is going to feel like a lot of green. But the reality is we won't see much of it when we're done. We're going to do some upright petals now. I took a moment to empty my bag, mix in some more of that dark purple, make a nice loose blend that's even a little bit darker than the one before. And this is going to help us create that gradient. I'm going to start here on my mound and just do a beautiful upright petal. I'm going to go a little bit to the left of it, right on top, each one, and do 2 more. And you can see that creates this kind of beautiful cupped, nested look. I'm just going to go right next to it and do another set. It shouldn't take more than 2 to 3 petals for each little set. Just do them almost right on top of each other. And you can see as you go, they'll kind of push and curl in just a little bit. And it'll probably take you 3 to 4 sets. And you can see right now, our peony looks kind of disconnected. There's these upright petals and these ones going out, but we need to put some action there in between. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to go back in now and do some of those fat petals. So just really kind of carefully at the bottom, just kind of gently touch the base of those upright petals with the back end of your tip, that fat end of your 122. And we're going to just draw some beautiful, big, fat ruffled petals. It might not take 6 of these. Just go in and do them wherever you need to. Just to kind of help join things together. I'll just squeeze one more in. There we go. Now we're going to do some more of our upright petals, but these we're just going to rock the tip out a little bit. So think about, instead of the opening going straight up, it's going to go just out a little bit on a 45-degree angle. You want to go kind of underneath each of your little upright groupings and just put in a petal. It'll probably take 4 to 5 of these, and it's going to make it look like they're unfurling, opening up, and it's going to help join them together with the rest of those sections. So just went in nice and careful, just gently touch your frosting and pull that nice little curve shape just off to a slight angle. And you can see now that flower is joined together. Those 2 very different segments that we had, the first section and those uprights, have joined together in this nice soft opening blossom. And it's giving us a beautiful colored gradient where we have that darker purple, beautiful kind of berry purple in the center, and it's folding out into a beautiful soft color on the outside. And we have just that tiny beautiful pop of green there in the center. You can see it's almost hidden, and it's really just acting as a beautiful support for those center petals. That's all for this lesson on blooming peonies. If you enjoyed this one and you want to check out and make some more fun peonies, you can check out our basic peony video or our open style peony for some great variety for your cake creations. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecorating.school.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.